corn, and not just this corn, is finally getting some decent green color to it. It's warmed up a little bit, but since we got the rain we needed a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, it's just been cold, like in the 60s, a couple days in the 50s.
Everyone thought they knew this farmer's story. A man who lost both arms, yet somehow built a life most people wouldn't even attempt. Millions watched him work the land, fix machines, and laugh through challenges that would break almost anyone else. But behind the viral videos and inspirational comments, there was a side of his life few people truly understood. The struggles didn't stop when the camera turned off. The pressure, the health battles, and the quiet moments no one saw all played a role in how this story really ended. And once you hear what actually happened, his journey hits very differently. Most people saw a smiling farmer driving tractors and fixing massive machines with his feet, and they assumed that was the whole story. But long before the cameras, long before the viral clips, his life was shaped by a moment that should have ended everything. As a small child growing up on a working farm in Ohio, one split-second accident changed his future forever. Both of his arms were taken in an instant, and doctors weren't sure how independent his life could ever be. What came next wasn't some feel-good montage. It was years of frustration, relearning basic tasks, and pushing through limits most people never face. While other kids were learning to write with their hands, he trained himself to do it with his feet. While others avoided farm work, he refused to let it go. The farm wasn't just where he lived, it was part of who he was, and giving it up was never an option. That determination became the foundation of everything that followed. He didn't grow up chasing sympathy or attention. He grew up proving quietly and consistently that he could do things his own way. The setbacks didn't disappear, but neither did his drive. And as the years went on, that same mindset would eventually pull millions of strangers into his world, even though he never planned on becoming famous at all. But the way his story reached the public wasn't accidental. And what happened once the internet discovered him changed everything.
Of the acres of regular beans we have, we also grow beans for seed, but the bins we have storage for regular beans, we can really only store like 35 bushel an acre worth. So hopefully we're more like somewhere from 60 to 70 bushel.
By the time social media entered his life, he wasn't looking for an audience. Farming was already a full-time grind, and every day came with new problems to solve. But when a few short clips of him working began circulating online, people couldn't believe what they were seeing. No edits, no dramatic music. Just a farmer doing real work in ways most viewers had never imagined possible. When he finally started posting regularly, the reaction was immediate. The channel grew fast, not because of shock value, but because everything felt real. Broken equipment, long hours, failed plans. It was all there. Viewers weren't just watching farming, they were watching problem solving in real time. And the more they watched, the more invested they became. What really pulled people in was his attitude. He never framed himself as a victim or asked for sympathy. He cracked jokes, shrugged off setbacks, and kept moving forward. That mindset turned casual viewers into loyal fans. Soon, millions were tuning in, not just to see what he'd fix next, but to hear his thoughts on life, work, and perseverance. But as the channel grew, so did the pressure. Expectations started to build. Every upload mattered more than the last. And behind the scenes, the weight of carrying an audience while running a demanding farm was quietly stacking up. And that pressure would soon collide with something far more serious than internet fame.
Well, it certainly feels drier than this morning, so let's put it in the moisture tester here. See what we come up with.
Not long after his channel hit its stride, subtle changes started to worry longtime viewers. The uploads were still there, but the energy felt different. He began opening up about serious health issues that had been building quietly in the background. What many people didn't realize was that he had been dealing with a major medical battle while still pushing himself to keep the farm running and the content coming. Doctor visits became more frequent. Treatments took a toll. Some days, even basic tasks felt heavier than usual. Still, he showed up on camera, often brushing it off with humor, saying he'd figure it out like always. That mindset inspired people, but it also raised questions. Fans began speculating whether he was pushing himself too hard, especially when videos showed visible exhaustion he never directly addressed. Comments flooded in telling him to slow down, to rest, to put his health first. But stepping away wasn't easy. Farming doesn't pause, and neither does an audience once it's built. The pressure to keep going, for the land, the viewers, and his own sense of purpose, quietly followed him every day. Behind the scenes, things were more serious than many realized. This wasn't just fatigue or stress. His body was fighting something that couldn't be solved with determination alone. And while he stayed positive publicly, those close to him knew the situation was unpredictable. What no one expected was how suddenly everything would change, because just as it seemed like he was pushing through once again, something unseen was already unfolding. As his health struggles became more visible, something else started happening that few people talked about openly. The line between his personal life and his online presence was disappearing. The farm wasn't just his livelihood anymore. It had become content. Every repair, every setback, every long day carried the silent pressure of knowing millions were watching. Running a farm is already unpredictable, but doing it under constant scrutiny added a new kind of weight. Viewers expected updates. Brands and collaborations came with expectations. And even when he wasn't feeling his best, there was an unspoken pull to keep filming, keep posting, and keep proving that nothing had changed. On camera, he stayed calm and lighthearted. Off camera, the exhaustion was harder to hide. There were moments when the upload slowed, and fans immediately noticed. Speculation started spreading in comment sections and forums. Some wondered if he was stepping back. Others feared something was seriously wrong. Instead of clearing the rumors, he chose to keep things simple, sharing just enough to reassure people without revealing how heavy things really felt. Despite everything, he kept working. The farm still needed attention. Animals still needed care. Equipment still broke down. Walking away wasn't part of his identity, even when slowing down might have helped. But that constant push forward came at a cost. And while he had overcome obstacles his entire life, this time the challenge wasn't something effort alone could fix. And as the days went on, the pressure kept building toward a moment no one saw coming.
These spiked closing wheels, like this one's pretty fresh, probably put it on last year. These spikes, when they're new, they're like 2.5 inches long, I think. Some of these others are getting pretty worn out, probably not doing a lot.
By the time his final videos appeared, nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first glance. He was still on the farm, still talking through problems, still making plans for what needed to be done next. To viewers, it felt like business as usual. That's what made everything that followed so hard to process. There were no dramatic goodbyes or warning signs, just a normal upload filled with the same calm tone and steady determination people had grown used to. Days later, the news surfaced that he had suddenly passed due to a medical emergency. The shock rippled instantly through the farming world and across the platform. Fans went back to rewatch his last moments on camera, searching for signs that something was wrong. Tributes poured in from everywhere. Fellow farmers, creators, and viewers shared stories about how his videos helped them through their own struggles. For many, he wasn't just a content creator. He was proof that limitations don't get the final say. The comment sections turned into digital memorials, filled with gratitude and disbelief. What hit hardest was how sudden it all felt. A life built on resilience, consistency, and pushing forward ended without warning. And in that moment, people began to reflect on how much pressure he carried without ever asking for sympathy. His story didn't end on the farm that day. It continued in the lessons he left behind about perseverance, purpose, and knowing when strength also means slowing down.
Idea being, when you've got rows of corn that get extra sunlight because they're not blocked by the rows of corn next to them, they yield a lot higher. So we're stripping 12 rows of corn between, so that's 30 feet wide, between 60-foot blocks of beans.
Even after his passing, his presence never really left. His videos continued circulating, recommended to new viewers who had no idea how the story ended. People would discover the channel, get invested in his journey, and then stumble across the comments revealing the truth. That moment hit just as hard for them as it did for longtime fans. The farm itself became a symbol of everything he stood for: hard work, independence, and refusing to let circumstances define your limits. Viewers began looking at his old uploads differently, noticing the small details they once overlooked: the determination in his voice, the quiet pride in finishing a job, the way he always focused on what could be done instead of what couldn't. Conversations started spreading beyond farming. His life sparked discussions about burnout, health, and the unseen weight creators carry when their livelihood becomes public. Many wondered how often people like him keep going, not because they're okay, but because stopping feels impossible. What made his legacy powerful wasn't just what he overcame, but how naturally he shared it. He never tried to be a symbol. He never asked to inspire anyone. He simply lived his life openly, and that honesty connected with millions. In the end, what really happened to the farmer's life wasn't a single moment or tragedy. It was a story of persistence, pressure, and purpose colliding in real time. And even now, his journey continues to remind people that strength isn't just about pushing forward. Sometimes it's about knowing when to pause. Today, his story still lingers in places you wouldn't expect. In comment sections, farming forums, and quiet late-night video binges, people continue to talk about the farmer who did things his own way. New viewers keep discovering his channel, often unaware of how it ends, and longtime fans keep returning because the message still feels personal. What made his life stand out wasn't just the obstacles he faced, but how normal he made perseverance look. He never framed his journey as extraordinary. He showed up, worked the land, solved problems, and moved on to the next task. That simplicity made the impact even stronger. It reminded people that strength doesn't always come with speeches or spotlight moments. His life also left behind an uncomfortable question. How many people carry heavy burdens without showing it? How often do we confuse resilience with being okay? For many viewers, his story became a quiet wake-up call about balance, health, and listening to the signs we often ignore. In the end, what really happened to the farmer's life wasn't just loss. It was influence. His work continues to motivate people to adapt, to keep learning, and to respect their limits as much as their ambitions. And long after the tractors stop running and the uploads fade, the lesson remains clear. A meaningful life isn't measured by how much you endure, but by the impact you leave behind. When people ask what really happened to the farmer's life, the answer isn't simple. It wasn't just about farming, fame, or a sudden ending. It was about a man who spent his entire life adapting, pushing forward, and proving that limits don't always win. His story showed the power of consistency, but it also revealed the quiet cost of carrying responsibility without slowing down. Even now, his videos continue to inspire people who are struggling in their own ways. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real. He worked through challenges without asking for sympathy, and that honesty is what made his journey unforgettable. In the end, his life reminds us of something deeper. Strength isn't only about enduring everything thrown at you. Sometimes it's about knowing when to rest, reflect, and take care of what truly matters before it's too late.